Okay, so hopefully this first video is good. If not, well, we'll deal with it, right? Okay. So if you haven't already, and you can follow along if you'd like, so on your other screen, if you'd like to open up Autocad and follow along, that's great. If you kind of just want to watch, that's great as well. And let me close out my Autocad here, and either you can, to activate or to open Autocad, you're going to have an icon that looks like this. It's going to say Autocad 2019 English, and that's going to be the icon that you want to use to open your Autocad. If you don't have an icon on your desktop, and like if you're at home and you know that you had, downloaded it and you know it's there somewhere, you can come down to the little window here and you can type in Auto, and Autocad 2019 will pop up. And if you want to create a desktop shortcut, you click and hold on this and drag it onto your desktop, okay? And that would create one of these. So I'm going to click, double click, and open up my Autocad 2019 here. And of course it's going to open my other screen because nothing is working. Okay, there we go. All right, so when we open up, let's get that working. Okay, so every now and again there are just nights when nothing works, right? Let's go back here. Okay. All right, so when Autocad opens up, by default, you are going to open up to your the welcome page, essentially, okay? And this view indicates that there are not any drawings open, essentially, okay? So a few things that we're going to see here. We're going to see a preview of some commands up at the top here, right? This is a little preview of what we call the ribbon, okay? You're going to see some start drawing buttons here, a template drop-down menu. You're going to see an open files, open sheet set, some other things. You're also going to see some previews of drawings right here under recent documents. You're going to see some notification things over here that we don't really pay attention to ever. You can come over here to the left side and mouse over, and in this screen, this shows video tutorials, getting started videos, and it also will show Autocad new features overview. So every time we switch from one version to another, Autocad is going to generate a video that says, hey, here's what's different in the new version, essentially, okay? So to get back, we're going to go to the right side, click on that arrow, okay? So probably the most important things in this view are going to be these two areas here, the Get Started and the Recent Documents area, okay? So to get started in Autocad, which means to open up a brand new blank drawing, we can click on Start Drawing here, okay? So if you wanted to open up a blank Autocad drawing that has no settings or preset anything in it, we can click on Start Drawing. Click. And a brand new blank Autocad drawing opens up, okay? What I want you to notice is that up here in the top kind of left-hand corner up here, and this is these little tabs that we're seeing up here, they're getting pretty common in a lot of different types of software, right? So in the Adobe type stuff, you'll see these little tabs kind of happening. But essentially right now, what I've done is I've opened up a new drawing. It's called Drawing Number 1, and it's a tab right here. If I mouse over the Start menu or the Start tab over here and I click one time, I'm brought back into the Start menu again, okay? I can click on Drawing 1 and I can go back to my drawing, okay? So this is how you're going to see all of your Autocad files opening. They'll open as tabs all along here, okay? So I'm going to go back to the Start menu over here. The Start menu, the Start Drawing button on the Start menu, this opens up a blank Autocad file. It's not associated with any discipline. It doesn't have any settings. It doesn't have any layers. It doesn't have really any sort of settings to help you get going on drawings, okay? If you wanted to start a file that had a template, or it's called a template essentially, if you wanted to start a file that did have some settings or that you had set up previously to start your drawings with, we have this templates button right here that has a drop down next to it, okay? There's a lot of kind of preset templates in here that we will talk about later. We're not going to quite get into these just yet, okay? I have an Open Files button. If there's a drawing that I have saved somewhere on my computer that I want to open and I want to browse to it on my computer, I could click on Open Files. and I could browse to wherever my AutoCAD file was located, click on it, hit open, and that would be a way for me to open a file from the start menu. Okay. We also have a recent documents area, so I'm going to kind of stop looking at this area for now, and I'm going to switch over to recent documents. Recent documents will show you documents that have been opened in AutoCAD recently and been saved, right? And I see somewhat of a little graphic preview of what document has been saved here, okay? I love and I hate this option because it's very, very nice to use, right? When it's just you kind of working on your own computer, it's very nice to use because I can click on one of those files and it says, hey, would you like to open this? And you say yes. And what this essentially does is it shortcuts to the current drawings you've been working on, right? Which is great because you don't have to hit open and browse to your file and find it and then open it and continue working, right? It's meant to be a shortcut. What I don't like about it is that if you ever, maybe corrupt a file and have to maybe you take a file and it gets corrupted and you have to create a new file with the same name that's saved elsewhere, or something to that nature where you've had one file but you have to create another file and maybe they have the same name or something weird like that. If you open up a file on here and it has the same name as another file, it could potentially save over the top of something that maybe you didn't want to save over the top of, okay? It's not as problematic in AutoCAD as it is in Revit, but I like to bring it up here because I think inevitably you all will also learn Revit in addition to AutoCAD. So kind of knowing that, this recent documents area is very nice, but it can be problematic with files, I think is very helpful. Okay, so in Revit, if I click on this and it's a previous version of a file I've been working on and I hit save, it will save over the top of my current file and kill all the work that I've been working on, right? It's not as extreme in AutoCAD, but still there's that potential, okay? And I guess what I'm getting at with this is that even though I really like this area and I'm very tempted to always click on this to open my drawings, I hold back and I always kind of go to open files and I browse to wherever I know my last drawing was saved, so they get the most current version and there's no weird interaction going on, okay? All right, so back looking here at AutoCAD, okay? I'm gonna come back up here to my drawing number 1, okay? And we'll come back to some of these things, right? So my intent for today is to introduce you to the software. I'm going to talk about a lot of different areas of the software. And then as we start doing some exercises starting next week, I will go back over all of these things again, okay? So today, it'd be good just to listen and to watch and to get acquainted with the software. And then next week, if you have questions about some of these things we've talked about and it's not clarified, then we can clear those things up. Okay, so I open up AutoCAD. I can either open up a drawing I've been working on, that somebody else has been working on, that somebody sent me, or I can click on new, start new drawing, and I can start a brand new fresh drawing, okay, which I've already done. I can click back and forth between my drawings up here, right? One thing I want you to notice is that the name of the current drawing that I'm in is indicated on the tab, and it's also indicated up here, right? Drawing number 1. Drawing number 1. Great. I want you to also notice we have these preview tabs here, right? As I'm mousing over, this tab, and I'm not clicking, I'm just mousing over, right? I'm getting a preview of something called Model, Layout 1, and Layout 2. Okay. Each of these areas corresponds to a section in AutoCAD. So as I hover over Drawing 1, I see a little indication of model space. This is model space, right? So I'm getting a preview of my different drawing areas as I'm mousing over these, okay? So I've got my model space, and then I have layout 1 and 2. Layout number 1, layout number 2, okay? So that's what that is indicating. I also want you to notice there's a little X or a close option here, right? So if I wanted to close this drawing, I could come up here, I could click on the close button, click, and I could close out that drawing. And because I hadn't done any work in it, it didn't ask me to save it, right? If I had done some work in it or altered the drawing in any way, it would have said, hey, you want to close this file? Would you like to save it first? And I would say yes or no, okay? So I can come up here and I can click on this and close out of any drawing. You'll also notice that I have a little plus sign right here, okay? If I click on that little plus sign, by doing that little maneuver, right, that little operation, That is essentially the same as me being in the welcome screen and clicking on start drawing. It's the exact same thing, okay? So whether I click on start drawing or I come up to drawing tab number 3 and click on this plus sign, the same thing is happening. A brand new blank drawing is being produced on the screen, okay? All right, any questions so far? Not bad, huh? All right, so once we're here in Autocad, okay, I just want to talk about all the different areas in the software, right? So we have our application menu, which is the big A. And if I click on that with my mouse, right, a menu pops up and I have a lot of systems operations in here. So things like open, save, new, I have some printing options, and I have some options that I can also change, okay? If I hit escape, that menu goes away, okay? The escape key in Autocad, in Revit, it's the get out of jail free card, right? If I get caught in a menu, I hit escape and it clears it out, right? Emma's laughing like, yep, that's exactly it, right? If I get in a command and I don't like the command, I hit escape and I get out of it, right? Escape will get you out of, and it will clear out any command that you're in, okay, just by hitting it. Up here we have the quick access toolbar right next to the big A, the application menu, okay? So up here we have a lot of the most commonly used icons in AutoCAD. So things like new drawing, right? Open file, save as, right? This one's a new one, open from the web and mobile. We have a save to the web and mobile, and then we have plot, we have an undo, we have a redo, and then we have this little drop down here. If I click on that, this will allow me to turn on and off these icons and customize it, okay? So if I don't really want to see new drawing on here, right, I would uncheck new and new goes away. It's a toggle, right? I click on the down arrow, I click on new again, and it reappears, okay? So I can turn, as you get more familiar with AutoCAD and what is helpful for you, you can customize this, okay? One pretty important thing that I do want to show you, and that will be pretty important for you to do if you're working here and you're also working at home. I like to say this because I think it's really very true. I don't think, again, AutoCAD's not a difficult program. It's just very comprehensive. And I think one of the hardest things about learning AutoCAD is going from here, where our screen looks one way, and then going home and working on our laptop or our desktop, and it looks slightly different, right? I think in general, everybody always does pretty well in this class, right? And they understand the topic, but they work here and then they go home and their screen looks ever so slightly different, and it's very confusing, right? So what I'm going to show you here is one way to get your screen looking the same from here to wherever you're working at home, okay? So if I click on this little down arrow here, and I go all the way down here to show menu bar, all of my file menus are going to pop up right below that quick access toolbar, okay? This is turned off by default in AutoCAD for whatever reason, but we use it all the time, so I don't really understand why they don't just keep it turned on. But when you go home or you install this on your laptop, these menus will not be shown. And so you're going to want to click on this down arrow and make sure that you show menu bar, okay? Okay. So right underneath our quick access toolbar, we have our files menus here. So we have file, we have edit, we have view, insert, format, tools, draw, dimension, right? A lot of different file menus that do a lot of different things, okay? Which we're not going to really talk about today, but I just want to show you where they are. Right below those file menus, we have our ribbon, okay? And the ribbon, this is, it's not really new anymore, I guess. The classic AutoCAD debate, right? So maybe like 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago now, they changed to this ribbon view, and it was really controversial because everybody had been working in what we call AutoCAD Classic for a long time, which is a bunch of little menu bars all over the place. So I think it was actually 2008, when they switched over to this ribbon, it was just like this huge uproar, like, oh, it doesn't look the same. We're never going to be able to function the same. How's it going to, it was a big, gigantic CAD mess, right? But a lot of softwares have adopted this now. So Word, Microsoft Word, right? Adobe somewhat has it, and Revit definitely has a ribbon, okay? And the way that the ribbon functions is that we have these different tabs. So Home, click, Insert, click, Annotate, click, Parametric, click, right? So we have all these different tabs, and all of these tabs have tool palettes on them. So under the Home tab, I have the Draw tool palette, and I have the Modify tool palette, and the Annotation tool palette, and the Layers tool palette, okay? Under Annotate, I have all of the annotation type tool palettes. So basically, these tabs organize like type tool palettes essentially, right? So when I want to draw and modify things, I go to the Home tab because all of the drawing and modification commands are on the Home tab. When I want to annotate something, I go to the Annotation tab because all of the annotation type functions like dimensions and text and multi-leaders, those are all of the tools for those are contained on the palette, on this tool palette here, okay? So we have all of these different tabs within our ribbon, okay? If your ribbon accidentally gets turned off, right? Let me skip ahead. I want to address the idea that your ribbon can get turned off accidentally and panic ensues, of course, right? Another one of those, hey, I want my computer at home to look like my computer at school so that I can function the same, right? Sometimes this ribbon gets turned off, and I want to show you how to turn it back on in case it gets turned off. But to do that, I'm going to introduce the idea of the command line, okay? So we're going to move from the top of the screen here all the way down to the bottom, and this is what's called our command line, okay? So in Autocad, you can initiate and control commands using the ribbon, and you can do that through icons, right? So I come up here if I want to draw a line, I click on line, click, 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 escape, escape to get out, and I was able to draw a line, okay? So I can initiate a command with an icon through the ribbon. But I can also initiate a command down here at the command line with a keyed in command, right? So if I come down here, I can click on the command line and I can start, well, hold on. Well, okay, I'm not going to get into that. What's going to happen is although I have initiated the command line down here, I have another setting turned on called dynamic input, which is like a mini command line near my cursor. We'll talk about if you want that turned on or off. Okay, but essentially it's a command line input. So if I wanted to draw a line here, knowing the command for line is L, enter, or line, enter, I could also type escape, escape, that command, and I could draw a line, initiating it using a typed in command. Okay, so whatever your preference is, I like to type. I like to be able to use my hand, right? Once you get into AutoCAD, you turn into like a big, gigantic AutoCAD nerd. And so I like to use my left hand to type in commands on the keyboard, and I like to use my right hand to mouse, and I don't like to take my mouse all the way up here and search through the menus to pick a button over here to, I feel like it's a waste of time. But I will show you, both ways of initiating commands, and you can pick whatever is best for you. I like to type out commands. My husband is a button guy. He likes to have every button, every menu possible open on an entire second screen, right? So he finds all of his little buttons and likes to click on things. He's very visual, and I think it's a gigantic waste of time. So I type everything in over here. But again, we'll talk about both methods. Okay, so we have our ribbon where we can initiate and execute commands, and we have our command line down here where we can input and execute commands, okay? If your ribbon accidentally ever gets turned off, and you go home and you're like, oh my gosh, my ribbon is gone, what happened, how do I get it back, okay? You can type ribbon, enter at the command line, and it will come back, okay? So there's one thing. What if, you go home and your ribbon is turned off? Just type ribbon at the command line, enter, and it will come back. What if you go home and all of your file menus are turned off, right? You use this little drop down on the quick access toolbar, and you, instead of, it saying hidden, you're going to say show menu bar, and that menu bar will turn back on. Okay. All right, we have some other things, going back to the top of our screen here. We have some things that have to do with, signing into your Autodesk account and kind of going onto the cloud to do different things or search for different things, which again, we're not really going to get into very much today. Okay. All right. We've talked about how we have our file tabs here, right? We've talked about how we can close them. We've talked about how we can create a brand new file with this plus sign. Moving down more into AutoCAD, right? I'm just gonna do this real quick, delete those. This black background with this little grid showing in the background, this implied grid in the background, this is what we call model space in AutoCAD. And model space is where we draw, all right? Model space is an infinitely sized drawing board. And what that means is that it is large enough to draw any size of, we'll say building, anything really, right? If you're a mechanical engineer, you're drawing parts to whatever type of machinery you're designing, right? If you are an architect, you're drawing gigantic buildings. If you are doing shop drawings, you're still drawing gigantic buildings, but you're just drawing the steel for them, right? But my point with that is that when you are drawing in AutoCAD, you draw in model space, and when you draw in model space, it's big enough to draw the buildings at real world scale. Okay, so if a building is 2 miles long by 6 miles wide, you will draw it at 2 mile, whatever I said, I don't remember what I said now, but big, you'll draw it big, right? 2 miles by 6 miles. Yep.
So are these little squares each like considered a certain distance, like a foot or like a meter or whatever?
Yes, they are. They are. And in this case, let's look and see what they are. They are 0.5 of a decimal inch right now. We haven't changed our units, but essentially this is about a ½ inch. Yes. Oh, and I just turned it off. Let me turn it back on. Okay. Now, the problem with this grid, though, is that you think, hey, there's a grid in AutoCAD. That's great. I'll use it to snap to it and measure things or draw according to it, right? But it doesn't really work that way very well. It's not something that you really interact with. In AutoCAD, it's more of a visual indication, more so than something that you interact with and use to help you draw. Okay, so usually when I draw in AutoCAD, I actually turn it off so that visually I just can't see it, because I somewhat feel like if there's a grid there, I should be able to use it a little bit more than you actually do in AutoCAD. And if I can't really use it, I just kind of turn it off, honestly. Okay, I'm going to turn it back on for a second though. So visually we have a grid, and you can change the grid spacing. So if you want it to be 3 feet by 3 feet, you can change that as well. All right, so we have model space, and in model space, whatever we're drawing, we draw it to real world scale. So our building is, 10 foot by 60 foot. We draw it 10 foot by 60 foot in AutoCAD. Great. Okay, and we have an infinite drawing board, which means that we have plenty of space to draw all of these things and have them fit. Model space is organized around what's called an origin, right? So here is my origin, and it's indicated by an XY axis. And we'll get into this a little bit more next time we meet. But it's, it's organized around the Cartesian coordinate system, I guess is really the system it's organized around, essentially, okay? So we have an x-axis, we have a y-axis, and AutoCAD is also capable of 3D modeling, so we do have a z-axis in AutoCAD, although we're only going to be working with the 2D nature of AutoCAD in this class. But this is essentially 0.000 in our model space, okay? Which again, I'm going to say this, but next time we'll talk about this so you know what it does, but I don't usually pay that much attention to the origin, right? When I go in and I start drawing a drawing, I will just come in, and if it doesn't matter, I mean, if you really need it to be oriented near the origin or a specific distance from it, that's different. But usually when you're drawing, an architectural project or something to that effect, you come in, you start your drawing, and you just keep it in the same spot, essentially. So I'm not all the time paying attention very much to the origin as well. All right. So we have our model space here. We have our origin indicated here. We have our command line down here. If I come up here to the top right-hand corner, I have what's called the view cube, okay? Do you all have the view cube on your, yes, it looks like, okay. So the view cube, this will And I'm just going to say for now, I prefer that you maybe stay away from it. Only because you don't really need to interact very much with it for what we're doing. Okay, the view cube is very helpful when you are working in 3 dimensions because it will allow you to pop into 3 dimensions and view things not from a flat 2D plane. Okay, when we're drawing in AutoCAD in 2D, we are drawing things in plan view essentially. So what I mean by that is we are drawing things as if we were looking from the top of a building, looking down on it, right? A certain distance, okay? So we're looking at things and we're drawing things in a flat 2D plane. We're not very worried necessarily about what it looks like in 3D, right? Which is what this view cube does. I'm clicking on these corners, right? I'm going to the top, which is what I drew, right? I can go to the side. It looks like a flat line because it's a flat 2D line that I drew, okay? And then I go back to my top view here. I'm going to try and get a little tricky again with what I did. Okay, it's great. Now the problem with what I just did is I did end up back in a top view, but do you notice that top is upside down, right? So I didn't reorient my drawing the right direction. It's kind of upside down right now. And also what this view cube does is it creates a top view, but it's a top perspective view of this drawing, which is really a confusing idea. And I only figured it out because one of my students maybe 5 years ago was having a terrible, terrible time creating her drawings, and I just couldn't figure out what was happening. All of her lines they looked straight, but they were not the right dimension, and then you would move the drawing a little and they would all look slightly skewed, and there was just so many things going wrong with her drawing and I couldn't figure it out. And then finally one day I was watching her move around in her drawing and she was using this view cube to kind of navigate around her drawing, right? And I thought, what is going on with that, right? And it was when this view cube was slightly new. And so what was happening is essentially she was using the view cube to kind of look around because she thought it was kind of fun. You know, she didn't really need to navigate that way. And she was drawing lines like this in her top view, you know, but what she wasn't realizing is that when she drew these, if you were to look at it in, you know, the top plane, it looked like that. But if I looked at it from the side view in a 3D view, it actually looked like that, right? So this line was here, and this line was way over there, right? Instead of looking at it this direction and having it be flat in that direction. It's called being non-coplanar. Does that make sense? Kind of, you know, it looks flat in this view. My line, if my arm looks, when I'm looking at it like this, looks flat, but when I change to this view and look at it from the side, it's definitely not, you know, flat. It's a non-coplanar, right? And so that's when I sort of realized that using this view cube puts you in a top view. You're viewing this in plan view, but you're viewing it in a perspective view at the same time. And so AutoCAD at times would snap to different planes, you know, a foot away, 2 feet away, and we'd get these really kind of crazy lines going on. So when I looked at her model in a different view, all of her lines were just all crazy. That was a tough one to figure out. So this is the view cube, but I would suggest maybe not interacting with it, you know, at all until you are very familiar with AutoCAD. If you happen to click on it, which does happen, you click on it accidentally, your drawing flips and you think, oh great, right? I didn't mean to do that. The way that you're going to be able to fix it is to come over here. We have also kind of the text version of our view cube. You can come over here where it says top, click on that. If I click on the top view here, I get a purely flat orthogonal view. So this view over here is not a perspective view. This view over here is, okay? And in fact, if I were you and you have this on your screen, I would likely just, let's see, I think we can just turn it off here if I remember. I'm going to click on that to turn that off. And let's see if we can. Usually I just type it in. There we go. We can turn it off. Okay, so the way, you know what, I'm not going to even go into how I turn that off. We'll talk about it next. We'll talk about it next time. But let's just stay away from the view cube. Okay, so we have our model space. I've turned the view cube off. Something else, a couple other things we're going to want to pay attention to in AutoCAD will be down here we have our object snap menu, okay, our buttons here. And then down here we have a model space, layout, and another layout tab, okay. I'm going to come over here first to our tabs here, okay. So if our model space tab, if I click on it, the text looks bright, and I am in model space. Okay, and we draw in model space. If I click on layout, my view changes a lot, okay? And it looks like a little piece of paper, right? But I still am able to view that drawing that I have drawn in model space, okay? Layout number 1, when I switch to layout number 1, this is called paper space. So in model space, we draw things, and in paper space, we print things. Okay, and there's two separate areas because one area, model space, we draw things to real world scale, right? So if a building is 100 feet by 100 feet, we draw it 100 feet by 100 feet. Now the problem with that is that when we go to print it, we have to somehow scale it down a specific, to a specific increment so that when I print it, it will print on a physical piece of paper that's 24 by 36 inches, right? So the idea is that I draw things in model space, and then I switch over to paper space, and using what we call a viewport, this is a viewport, it's not just a rectangle, it's actually an object called a viewport. We view model space, and the viewport scales model space so that we can physically fit that very large drawing onto a physical piece of paper that's 2 foot by 3 foot, essentially, okay? So we draw in model space, we view the drawing in model space in paper space, and we print from paper space, okay? So that's what these layouts are going to be. And you want to notice that we have one here, we have a second one here. If I click on this little plus sign, click, I can create new layouts. So 3, 4, okay? The idea behind that is that I may have multiple drawings in one model space, right? In model space, I might draw a level 1 of a building, and level 2, and level 3, and level 4, right? And I may want to print them each on their own individual page. So it makes sense that I could have 1, 2, 3, 4 different tabs where I can somewhat zoom into different areas in a drawing, right? There's the corner, okay? Maybe on this drawing, click, click, I want to capture this crossing, click, click. Maybe on this drawing, click, click, I want to zoom into the corner here, right? Click, click. And maybe on this drawing, I want to view the entire thing, which is what I'm doing, okay? But again, in model space we draw, and in paper space we scale and print, okay? You will know you're in paper space because, number one, it looks like paper space. It looks like a little piece of paper, right? It has a white background, and the UCS icon, this little axis here that indicates the origin, looks like this. It's blue, and it has the Y, kind of in this top position, and the X on the right here. But it looks blue instead of like this. Okay, so I feel like it's very clear whether or not you're in paper space or model space. But looking at what's called your UCS icon down here, right, that denotes the origin of your model space, you'll be able to tell very quickly where you are. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? All right. All right, so let me talk about all of our object snaps down here, okay? We have this menu down here, and it has a lot of different little buttons on it, okay? Sorry, I'm going to make sure I'm not forgetting anything here. Hold on. Oh, good, okay. So I have model, and I have a bunch of other little icons, right? Some of them are blue, and some of them are not really anything. They're just kind of grayed out, okay? These are called object snaps. Here we have some drawing aids. We have some things that will help us scale model space, and some annotative qualities down here, which me saying all of that right now doesn't mean anything to you, but it will eventually, right? But essentially all of these little icons down here, all of these little buttons do different things to help you draw in model space. All right, So for example, this little icon right here is called ortho mode. So the way that I know that one of these icons is functioning, it's turned on, is it's blue. If it's blue, it's turned on. If it's grayed out, it's turned off, okay? All of these are also somewhat automatic, meaning when they're turned on and I go to draw something in model space, they just kind of pop up when they are needed, okay? So you don't have to click on the icon and then do something to make it work. It just sort of automatically works. So for example, I have ortho. Now let me show you, I'm just gonna, again, today is kind of one of those just watch what I'm doing, and we'll get into these more, you know, a little bit later on. So I'm gonna just draw a line, right? I showed you before I can come up here to my line tool and click, right? I can click, 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 escape, escape, escape. Great, okay. I can also L for line, enter, click, 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 escape, like drawing some lines. Now what you may not notice is that when I draw these lines, you see how I can somewhat make them angled, I can make it straight, right? But I can make it angled, and it's very free-flowing, okay? One of the drawing aids that is very useful to us is called ortho. So for example, if I click on ortho and I turn it on, okay, and I come back up here to my model space to draw, L for line, enter. When I go to draw, I'm moving my mouse up and down, but you see that line it's only going straight, right? Ortho constrains your lines to only be able to draw at each quadrant of a 90-degree circle, okay? So essentially it helps you draw completely straight lines, which is very important in AutoCAD, right? We want very precise dimensions. We want things drawn to real-world scale so they're correct, and we want straight lines. So this is nice. I want to draw a perfectly straight line, click, click, and whatever direction I move, right, those lines are perfectly straight. I don't have to worry about it, okay? Now I want to go back to drawing lines that maybe are angled because we need to draw angled lines. So I would turn my ortho off, uncheck, L for line, and I could go back now very freely to drawing angled lines. Okay. So all of these different buttons down here are drawing aids, right? They don't all function like ortho, but they offer something. So we have the grid. If I click on the grid, turns off, turns on, right? I'm not going to do all of these. I'll just do a few. Ortho helps you to draw straight lines. We have polar tracking, which will allow you to draw at a specific angle. So if I want to only draw angles that are 23 degrees, I would select that. And then every time I hit 23 degrees, do you see that? Right? It would allow me to do that. Well, that says 22. Just kidding. No, not really. Let's see. 30 degrees. Yep, there we go. Right? So 30. Hopefully I hit 60, 90, right? 120, right? So this will help me draw specific angles. I've got my, let's go to this one. I have my object snaps, okay? Object snaps help me to draw lines at specific points on other lines. So if I want to draw a line and I want to start at the end point of this line, that endpoint object snap pops up. It's that green rectangle or square. Click, and when that green square engages, I know that when I click my mouse, that line will be exactly at the end point of those two lines, right? Or midpoint. Oh, maybe I don't have midpoint turned on. Hold on. Naima's not a midpointer. She always turns it off when she's in here. Okay. So if I want to draw from the midpoint, oh, there's my midpoint snap. I know that when I click, I am going to be drawing from the midpoint of that line. I'm bisecting it, okay? We have nearest. So wherever I click, if that's the nearest snap, it looks like a little hourglass, right? If I click when that snap is engaged, click, it just starts somewhere on that line, the nearest point to you, right? And you guys probably get the idea. There's a lot of them, right? So we have endpoint, midpoint, center, geometric center, node, quadrant, intersection. You guys can see all these. So we have all of those object snaps available to us. These are some annotative qualities that we're not really going to talk about too much today. I have workspace settings here. And so we're not going to talk about all of these today because it just really wouldn't make a whole lot of sense just yet, right? But these are all going to help you draw. Now, this is not the extent of all the tools available to us on this, the Object Snap toolbar. I have a little, these 3 little lines down here called customization. And if I click on those 3 lines, here are all of the options available to me as far as functions in this Object Snap toolbar here. I think that probably, I'm going to turn some of these on and off. I'm going to turn that one off. I'm going to turn that off. No, I'm going to leave that on, sorry. We'll do that one, okay. We'll leave that off. Workspace switching. We're going to turn units on. I want to turn units. Oh yeah, we did turn units. Quick lock, isolate, good, clean screen. Okay. So if it were my, and I'm going to turn coordinates on. If it were my choice, I think these would be my picks as far as what options I have available for me to turn on and off right there. And again, we're recording this lecture, so you can go back, and if you want to set this, you know, just like mine, you can do that. Oh, one thing I am going to turn on is dynamic input. That's the one I want to turn on as well. Okay. So when I'm done with that, I'm just going to hit escape and get out of it. Okay. If I want to change these again, I'm going to click on them and I'm going to alter them. All right. Okay. So I turned on a couple, I turned a few off, right? Again, we're not going to get too much into it today, but we will talk about them as we move forward. Okay. All right. Let's see. Sorry, let me just look here, make sure I didn't forget anything. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So there's a couple other things I want to talk about today. I want to talk about units in AutoCAD. I want to talk about how you're going to navigate around the AutoCAD model space. And then I want to talk about different file types in AutoCAD. So you can recognize what an AutoCAD file looks like and all the 3 or 4 or 5 different file types that are associated with it. Okay. So first thing I want to talk about is let's do navigation first. Okay, so how do we, we're going to start learning how to draw, obviously, but how do we navigate about our model space, right? Let's talk about that. First thing, we've already somewhat talked about this, is that to get out of a command, or if you're stuck in something, you're going to hit escape, right? So escape, 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 that's always your way out, okay? Another thing I want to bring to your attention is that in AutoCAD, the space bar and the enter key on your keyboard function as enter. So if I initiate a command, like I type L and I want to execute the command, I hit enter. But I can hit enter or I can hit spacebar. So L, spacebar, and spacebar acts as enter. Okay, so that's another thing you're gonna have to get used to. And this is different from Revit, right? In AutoCAD, whenever I initiate a command with a keyboard, I type in the command, I hit enter. In Revit, it's completely different, okay? But the spacebar and the enter key both function as enter, okay? You're going to be using your mouse a lot for navigation around the screen. And what I mean by that is we're going to be zooming in and out using our mouse. We're going to be panning back and forth using our mouse, okay? So to move about AutoCAD, we're going to pan. So moving left, right, all around. And panning, if you look at your mouse, you have that little middle roller button, right? If you hold your roller down, continue to hold it down and move your mouse, you will pan, okay? You can pan anytime, and even if you're in the middle of a command, it won't break your command. So if I initiate the line command, I'll enter, and I'm in the middle of the command, but I think, oh, I really want to draw my line up here. I can pan, let go, pan, let go, pan, let go, and then I can start my command. While I'm in the middle of a command, I can pan, 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 click, right? So panning, navigation around your screen, doesn't break your command, right? So you're going to want to get really used to panning around your screen. So hold your middle button, move your mouse, let go. Hold your middle button, move your mouse, let go, right? Escape, escape. Okay? We have panning, and then we have zooming. Zooming is also really important in AutoCAD. So when I zoom, I'm also going to use my little middle roller button, and I'm going to roll it away from me, right? And I'm going to zoom in. And now I'm thinking, oh great, all of that stuff that was just on my screen is gone, right? So I'm going to roll the mouse button towards me. Roll it towards me, keep going, keep going, keep going, and I'm zooming out. Roll it away from me, and I zoom in. Roll it back the other direction, and I zoom out. Okay? If I get lost in AutoCAD, which sounds really silly, right? But it happens all the time, okay? I zoom in way too far and I pan about a little bit and I think, oh great, where am I? How am I going to zoom? Oh, nothing is working and I'm just lost and I can't find my drawings, right? I'm going to do what's called a zoom extents. A zoom extents will allow me to take my screen and zoom it out to the extent of every piece of drawn geometry on that screen so I can see everything, okay? Zoom extents, I'm going to use my middle roller button again and I'm going to double click it 2 times as fast as I can. So click, 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 click. Oop, not up there though, in model space, click, click. And it brings me all the way to the extent of my drawing. Now, if you don't have anything drawn on your screen right now because you don't know really how to draw very much, then nothing is going to happen, right? But when you do get drawing, if you get lost somewhere, right? I'm all the way over here in the middle of nowhere, okay? I can double click my middle roller button twice, click, click, and there we are, zoom extents. Okay, so we have panning where I hold the middle roller back and forth, let go, up and down, let go. I can keep going. So I'm pushing down my middle roller, letting go, pushing down, letting go, pushing down, letting go. And I'm just grabbing my screen and I'm moving my drawing board back and forth. Okay, okay, I'm lost. I can't see anything. I'm going to zoom extents. Click, click the middle button. There we are. I'm going to move the roller away from me. Zoom in, move the roller towards me, zoom back out. Okay. All right. Any questions about navigating AutoCAD?
Right there where it's so small, you double click, is that just going to bring that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, so if I click, click, it brings it right in. Yep. All right, so we know how to navigate around AutoCAD, and these functions work in model space and paper space identically. So if I come down here and I go into paper space, right, I zoom in, I zoom out, I pan back and forth. Okay, click.
You can't draw on paper space, right?
You can, yeah, you can, but it's not its main purpose. So any drawing of geometry that you're going to be doing will be done in model space. Yeah. All right, so we have our navigation. We know how to pan, we know how to zoom, we know how to zoom extents. Great. I want to talk about units, okay? By default, when a brand new drawing is opened in AutoCAD, and when I say brand new drawing, I mean, we'll call it the Autodesk default template, okay? So I click on Start New Drawing, and I open up a blank drawing from AutoCAD. I turned on down here on my Object Snap toolbar down here, I turned on one of these little icons called units. So if you remember, I clicked on customization and I turned the units on, right? So there's a little check mark next to it. We have to set our units in AutoCAD before we start drawing anything. Okay, this is probably one of the most forgotten topics. You know, you get in, you start drawing, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute. Was I in the right units, right? This is probably one of the most forgotten things, and it's probably one of the most important things, actually. But, you know, we need to be able to navigate around AutoCAD, and we need to be able to set the units so we're drawing things correctly, right? By default, when I open up an AutoCAD drawing like this, you're going to see the units are set to decimal, and decimal means decimal inches, okay? So really, when you open up AutoCAD, it's actually meant for a civil engineer to start drawing, okay? Which means that for an architect, right, or somebody who's working in construction management who's drawing in architectural units, when you draw in decimal units, you're drawing 12 times too small, because decimal units in AutoCAD, it's a decimal inch. Okay, so I can come in here and I can type in L for line. I can click, move in the direction I want to go, and I could type in something like 15, enter, and think, oh, that's 15 feet. But it's actually not. It's 15 feet divided by 12, whatever that is, right? So kind of the first thing that you want to make sure that you're aware of is that you know how to navigate, you know how to change your units once you get into your AutoCAD drawing, okay? And it's really easy. There's two ways you can do it. Well, there's more than two ways you can do it. I can turn on my units down here on my Object Snap toolbar, again by clicking on the customization and just making sure there's a check mark by units. I actually, this is it's probably the easiest way to change your units, but what I like about it is that it's a visual cue, right? I might start drawing around here, but the second I come down here to turn on a snap or turn off a snap, I'll visually look at that and say, oh, I forgot to change my units, right? So it visually reminds me to make sure that's been done, okay? We want to change our units to architectural. When we're drawing in architectural units, that is, right? And it's important for all disciplines to know this, because civil engineers may draw in decimal inches, but you will receive architectural files in architectural units, right? So you need to know how to interact with both file types. And architects may draw in architectural units, but you will receive a civil site plan from a civil engineer and need to know how to interact with it, right? So, and the same applies for anybody in construction management, right? You'll get files from both disciplines and need to know that one is 12 times too small and one is in architectural units, right? So you're going back and forth and you're drawing in both units all the time, okay? So it's important to know the difference. So we're going to be drawing in this class, well, we'll be going back and forth a lot, but when we're drawing architecture, we'll be drawing in architectural units, okay? So now when I draw L for line, I click and I move in the direction I want to go. Do you now see how my little temporary dimension up above my line, it says feet and inches now, right? 1 foot, 1.5 inch, as opposed to when this was in decimal, 10.2159. Okay. We have some other, right? Engineering, fractional, scientific, but mainly we're really going to be worrying about these two. Okay. So I can come down here, I can change my units here. I can also type units, U-N-I-T-S, enter. And I can change my units here. So I can choose the type of them will be architectural. My precision I want to change to 1/64th, and this looks, I could change the precision here, maybe to a 1/3 decimal unit, and hit OK. I can also find that up here in the application menu somewhere. Where is, oh, right here. Drawing utilities and units. Okay.
Generally like a 64?
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so we know how to navigate, we know how to set our units. Again, we'll go over this a lot, especially the units. I'll remind you constantly to set your units to the right increment or right unit to be drawing. Let's talk about saving files, right? So we need to be able to navigate files, be able to make sure we're drawing correctly. We need to know where everything in the interface is, and then we need to be able to save our file types, okay? So I'm going to create a new file on my desktop. I was going to type spring. I'm still stuck in spring, right? And I want to save my AutoCAD file now. Okay. Let's see here. So the way, saving any file, everybody pretty much knows, right? We've got the Control S, which will save a file. I can come up here to File, Save, and that works. I can save with this little icon here. I can drop down and choose, there's about 19 different ways we can save a file in AutoCAD, right? I can type save at the command line and hit enter, and that will work. But the important thing is, if I hit save, or I go to exit my drawing and it says, would you like to save this? Of course, we want to save our work. I'm going to browse to my desktop, and I'm going to go to wherever I want to save my files. Click, click. I'm going to give this a new name, test file, and I want to save it. Okay. Before I save it, I want you to notice that down here under it says files of type, we have a lot of different types of files we can save this drawing as. We have AutoCAD versions, you know, gosh, it goes all the way down to R14, 2000, 2004, 2007. We have all these different versions of AutoCAD that we can save this file as. And these are in .dwg format, okay? There are really probably we'll talk about 3 file types. There are really 4 file types. We're going to talk about 4 file types. 4 file types in AutoCAD that you're going to be worried about. We have the DWG file, okay? And that is a working AutoCAD drawing file. So when you go and you open up your file types to work in them, you want to make sure that they're DWG format, okay? AutoCAD is one of those softwares where it will allow you to save down to a previous version, which is very helpful when you're working with a consultant that only has AutoCAD 2014, right? They don't have AutoCAD 2019 because they don't update every year maybe. So what's nice about AutoCAD is that one of your consultants has AutoCAD 2014, you can save your drawing down to version 2013. Okay, I can hit save, and by doing this, when that consultant receives your drawing, they will be able to open it with their older version. Okay, they've done away with this in Revit. So in Revit, if you start a drawing in the newest version of Revit, there's no going back, period, right? Which is, I feel like, a pain in the neck. But you're going to maybe lose some functionality in AutoCAD if you go back, 10 versions. But if you stay within a few years, I think 2013 is 5 years ago now, I guess, right? At this point, I probably wouldn't save down below 2013 unless you really, really, really had to, right? Most people have a version that's newer than that by now. But you can choose, AutoCAD 2013, hit save, and then somebody with a previous version can use it. Okay, so I'm going to hit save. All right, so let's look at what that looks like. Oops, let's do, here we go. There is my test file.dwg, okay? So it is a blue and yellow file. It has a DWG extension. That's my working drawing file, okay? There's my test file. I'm going to close out. I'm going to close out of a few of these, actually. Here we go. There we go. Okay. So now when I want to open this, I can double click on it. Click, click. Maybe. Click, click. And there you go. There's my file. Okay. I come in here. I do a few things. I delete a few things. I draw another line or two. I hit save. Control S. Right? Or I come up here and I click on save. Now by doing that, AutoCAD has an automatic backup file system that generates when you hit save. So now when I'm working, not only do I have my test file.dwg, I also have my .bak file, okay? The .bak file is my backup file, all right? So if I'm in AutoCAD and I do a few things and I save this, Control S, right? And for whatever reason, I close out of it, and then somebody comes along and they delete my file. Delete, and it's gone, right? Or you drop it onto Google Drive and you thought you did and it's gone. Something's happened, right? It's missing. As long as you have this BAK file, and this doesn't always work when I kind of show it, because it usually takes a few saves to get the backup going, right? Hopefully it worked this time. But this will generate as you work, right? Usually you're not working for 5 minutes at a time. But I can restore my backup file and recover, a portion of my work at least, okay? The way that we're going to restore a backup file is I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to rename it. I'm going to rename it by deleting the BAK extension and typing DWG, Okay, and I'm gonna hit enter. And normally when you do that, it's a big no-no, right? Because you make the file unusable when you do things like that. But in AutoCAD, when I do that, it says if you change a file name extension, it might become unusable, and you're just gonna say, yes, I wanna change it. By doing that, it becomes a working file again, okay? And now I can click, and I can open it, and it did actually this time recover all of my work, right? Which is really helpful. It doesn't always go back maybe as far as you wanted it to, but I think it does auto saves at least every half hour. You can change that increment, but I guess the point of it is that a lot of times you can get something back, right? And I feel like, funny enough, this is something that even people who've been using AutoCAD for a really, really, really long time, they either forget about it or they so rarely do it, they just don't think about it. But working professionally, there have been several times when our backup failed or somebody deleted something or moved it and we needed a previous version or whatever, right? And this was something that actually saved us. Okay, so it's very useful. But I have to say, and let me show you. So now I have my working file. Oop. Let me hit in my AutoCAD file here, Control S. And my backup file is regenerating. So I just deleted my working file, renamed my backup, right? Which turned it into a working file, opened it, saved it, and it created another backup, okay? These little backup files are very messy. I don't like having all these files in my file structure. It's very tempting to delete them, right? But don't do it. You'll regret it. Maybe at the end of a project when you're finished working, you're completely done, you know you won't need to access a backup anymore, you can delete them, but for the entire project, you'll want to make sure that you keep them. All right, so we have our DWG. We can save it in whatever year's format we need it. We have our BAK file. The other two formats I'm going to talk about are going to be a DXF and a DWT file, okay? So I'm going to file, save as, this current file. And instead of saving this as a DWG file, I'm going to save this as a DXF, okay? A DXF is a drawing exchange format. And I don't actually tend to use this a whole lot. I would say that probably the most current reason that I had to use a DXF file was to take one of my AutoCAD files into SketchUp, essentially, because they do go back and forth. But a drawing exchange file allows AutoCAD to be in an exchange format so that you can open it in other CAD systems, other computer-aided drafting systems, essentially. You have a question?
Just kind of a little bit back when you said saving with the files of type, you want to choose an earlier version, right? So if somebody has an earlier version of it, they can open it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of habit for me. I don't ever save it in the most current version because even just people upgrading from year to year, nobody ever has the newest version at the same time. So I usually pick the one just below that usually. Yeah. So DXF, right? You'll find weird uses for it all the time. Like you want to go from AutoCAD to SketchUp, and maybe your DWG file isn't going in for whatever reason. Or if you have a rendering program or some type of VR or something where you need a CAD format, but maybe it won't necessarily take an AutoCAD file, but it will take a drawing exchange format, right? It's just another type of file that is AutoCAD in nature that maybe makes it a little easier to accept into a different CAD program. So I can save my DXF, and it looks like that. Okay. Finally, I have what's called a DWT file, and we'll be talking about this in a couple weeks. But we have a DWT file, and it's right there, and that is a drawing template file. Okay. When you're working professionally with AutoCAD, you will generate a template file that you work with. And what that means is that you take an AutoCAD file that's blank and you design all of your personal custom settings into that file. So none of this makes any sense to you right now. except Emma. But you'll put in layers, you'll put in dimensions, you'll put in text styles, you will put in layout tabs, you'll put in title blocks, you'll put in blocks. You'll put a lot of different things into one AutoCAD file, and you will save it into a template format so that every time you begin a new project, you have this one file that is blank, meaning it doesn't have any geometry in it, but it has all of your personalized settings in it, essentially, right? So when you start a brand new drawing, all you have to do is start your drawing. You don't have to set up the layers and set up the dimensions and set up the text and the multi-leaders and put your title block in and add all of your custom blocks. They're all built into this template file.
So say
Yep.
you're working, we'll just use like housing for example, so like
Right.
you're working in the Rosecrest development, so you have like a Rosecrest like Oakwood home template, and then you would have like the electrical, structural, things like that within, like, so like you would have that template, and then within that drawing you could do specifics for like that home.
So you could set it up that way. There's a lot of different ways you could set it up. So you could set it up so that you have one company standard. But if you work with specific clients all the time, like Marriott or something like that, you could have a template that's Marriott's template so that it has their title block and their blocks and their furniture and all of the things they specifically used. So it's not uncommon to have 8 different templates that you use for different clients. Yep, absolutely. But the idea is that you just get in there and you draw. There's no setup, right? And we'll develop a very basic template in this class so that you have something to work with as well. But when we save our drawing template file, right, I'm going to give mine a name. You'll notice that AutoCAD defaults to a template folder, okay? Actually, I'm not going to save it in there because I don't want to do it just yet because we'll do this later. But you're going to see there are some templates already in there, right? Let me just show you these. So ACAD DWT, right? These all have the DWT extension. So this file, if I save it as a DWT, it doesn't go to my, my file here by default. It defaults to where AutoCAD saves all of its template files, okay? And the reasoning behind that is so that when I'm here on my Start menu and I click on the Templates drop-down, all of those templates from AutoCAD show, but the ones that I create, I could save them in there as well. So if I had the Shelly template, I could come in here, click on the Shelly template, and it would open from my AutoCAD interface, right? Instead of me having to browse or do something else to find it, okay? So we have our DWT file. Now, not to say that I actually can't save it external from AutoCAD, because I can. I can do File, Save As, create all my settings. I can change this to a DWT file, go to my desktop, browse to my specific folder, and there is a template file that's been generated, okay? So we have our DWT, which is a template file. We have our backup file, our DWG, and then we have our DXF, okay? So those are going to be all of the different file types in AutoCAD that you'll see. In general, for the next several weeks, we'll probably be working mostly with BAK and DWG files, essentially. Okay, let's see. Okay, so just a couple of quick things more, and then we'll call it a night. I'm not going to give you any homework for tonight, yay, right? But next time you'll start having homework next time. But I do want to, in case you want to go home and make sure, did everybody get AutoCAD downloaded, by the way? Yeah? Maybe? Not yet? Close? Okay. All right. I was gonna say, in case you want to go home and play around with AutoCAD, I'll give you a few small tools so that you can at least kind of play around and navigate, okay? So any of these icons, really, if you click on them, right, I can click online. If I move over into model space, by clicking on the icon, it initiates the command. I can click in model space, move in the direction I want to go, click again, click, 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 escape. Okay, so I can click on the circle, click, click, there's my circle. Click on circle again, click, click, There we go, right? So you won't be able to create a lot of dimensional things, or, but you might be able to get in and play around with things, okay? But the problem you get into is that, hey, I've generated all this stuff on my screen. How do I get rid of it when I don't want it anymore, right? Well, I can select objects and I can delete them in model space, right? So you can initiate almost any drawing command in here, click, click, do whatever drawing you want to do. And then if you want to get rid of some geometry, you can click right on it, click, right? I'm not doing anything with my mouse now. I've moved my mouse kind of away. That's called a pick. And I can hit delete on my keyboard. Delete. Okay? So I can click, click, and I'm getting right on those. Click, 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 right? And as I hover over it, do you see that it somewhat brightens, it highlights? So I know I am in a position to select if I click right now. Click, okay? And I hit delete. Delete. Okay, so that's kind of the slow way of doing it. It's called the pick. We can also use some selection windows to select multiple things at a time. So for right now, I'm going to pan over. I'm just going to center my things a little bit, zoom out a little. If I come up here in the top right-hand corner and I click and I just let go of my mouse and I pull my mouse over the top of these objects, this is a green selection window, and a green selection window, if I click a second time after I have moved over my objects, click, it highlights multiple things at a time, okay? So if I select something, I can hit delete, or I can hit escape to deselect, right? But I can come up here in the corner, click, let go of the mouse button, move my mouse over an object, or even come over here and get a couple of things, right? Click again, delete, okay? So click, click, delete. Now, this caused a whole lot of uproar in the Autocad world as well, right? If you click your mouse in space and you don't let go, but you move your mouse, we get this fancy little guy happening. This is the lasso. It's a gigantic mess. It's the lasso, right? So you can select things with it, but it's just, I don't prefer it. We'll say that. You get quite particular in what commands you like in AutoCAD, right? So not my favorite, but if you click and you hold and you drag around, you could do that. Escape, escape. But again, I kind of like the selection window where I click, I move over objects, I click again, and then I hit delete, right? If I've done something mistakenly and I want to undo it, AutoCAD does have an undo button. So I can come up here, there's my little undo, I can click, 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 and just keep going until I get back to where I want to be. Okay? I can also redo. Click, 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 right? I could just keep going until I get where I want to go. So you can come in here, and I would say that you probably won't get much past the drawing commands if you want to kind of play around in here, right? So line, polyline, circle, arc. We've got rectangle, center, don't do hatch. But like, for the love, don't do hatch. Can't be trusted with hatch yet. But any of these other tools, right? Rectangle, just click until it ends, right? Just play around. You can always pick it, click, and delete. It will go away, right? We can zoom in, we can zoom out, we can pan back and forth. We can click, click, zoom extents. We can click in space, let go of the mouse button, mouse over, click again, hit delete, right? Do all those things. We can undo, we can redo, we can save, right? So I think that's a good amount for tonight.
So going left,
yeah.
Green, going right, blue.
Yes, yes. So he wants to know a little bit more about selection. Okay. I'm joking. So if you click from the top right-hand corner and move to the bottom left, anything that you touch, even if you just touch a tiny bit of it, is selected. Okay? As opposed to moving from the bottom left to the top right, you notice that if I touch that, nothing happens, right? So this selection I only select items that are entirely selected in that blue window, right? So it's a method of filtering things out. So if I'm in a very confined space, which sounds really silly, but it happens in AutoCAD, where maybe I just want to get like this line. If I come in here with the green selection window, I pick all 3 of those, right? There's no way around it. I could also use the blue selection window, click, and now I can very selectively pick just one object on my screen. Okay, so that's what the blue selection window is going to do. Yep. Any other questions for tonight? Okay. Yep.
So I downloaded AutoCAD and also downloaded like Autocad, Photo.
Yep.
Are those necessary as well?
Well, I mean, we're not going to use them, but.
I just noticed my computer runs like ridiculously slow now.
Oh. So AutoCAD and Revit, they just suck the life out of your computer, right? But usually, is it a fairly new computer?
Yeah, about like 3 months ago. It's got 8 gigs of RAM, 2 terabytes. So I mean.
Oh yeah, that's pretty good.
You should be fine with that, to be honest.
If you want it to be quicker, you could probably go and get a little bit more of the RAM. So instead of 8 gigs, maybe do like 16. And I don't think it'd be that expensive to upgrade your memory, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's not like I can't work now. It's just noticeably different.
It's different. Yeah, it'll get slower for sure.
After a reboot, it might work better.
Oh yeah, you could try that. Reboot it and see. They're just it's very heavy on memory.
My computer was like a $2,000 machine to something that's like $700, so I'm already kind of picky anyways.
Oh. Well,
I'm sure that's probably more what it is. Just I'm used to something a lot faster.
yeah. They're definitely pretty hefty. And then when you start using Revit too, same thing. It'll bog it down, but.
All right.
All right. Any other questions for tonight? Okay. There won't be any homework for the week. I will post a quiz for next week. So I won't have it due this week. I'll have it due next Sunday. So it'll give you a week and a half to get it done just for the first one. And then next week we'll really start talking about drawing techniques and how the system of AutoCAD works and how we input dimensional geometry. So we'll start talking about that. Okay. Let me stop my video here.